Jack Armstrong stood at the edge of the space station's central kitchen, watching the steam rise from a pot of boiling broth. His fingers worked quickly, adding the final pinch of spice, adjusting the heat just right. For a man who had grown up on Earth, far from the sophisticated technologies of the galaxy's core systems, cooking was one of the few things that still brought him peace. It was his art, his therapy, and in this frozen corner of the galaxy, it was his way of proving that humans had something valuable to offer. His station, the Tralles Expanse Research Hub, was located on the outer rim, far from the shining lights of galactic power. Most of its inhabitants were scientists, engineers, or travelers passing through the area. The station wasn't much, a series of modular buildings floating on the edge of a barren moon, orbiting a dead planet. But to Jack, it was home. Today, however, would be different. The doors to the kitchen slid open, and a pair of figures stepped in, both clad in the dark, reflective armor of alien emissaries. Jack's gaze flicked up from the simmering pot, his stomach tightening. He recognized them immediately, the Zhael sisters. Nixery, the elder of the two, was tall, her posture rigid and commanding. Her eyes, black and glossy, seemed to absorb all the light around her. Beside her, Velena, slightly shorter, moved with a grace that was almost predatory. Her sharp features softened by a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Jack had heard of the Zhael, their empire spanned over 50 systems, and their influence was as cold and calculating as their reputation. What they wanted here, Jack wasn't sure, but it couldn't be good. Chef Armstrong, Nixery's voice cut through the silence, her tone clipped, efficient. We have come to sample your renowned culinary creations. We've heard much about your skill. Jack straightened up, trying to push aside the unease that gnawed at him. He wiped his hands on his apron, his fingers still trembling slightly. Well, it's not exactly the finest Earth cuisine, but I'll do my best. Velena smiled, her lips curving up in an almost approving way. We don't seek luxury, she said, her voice softer than her sister's. We are simply curious about your people. Jack motioned to the long counter where a simple but hearty spread of food had been prepared. A mix of meats, vegetables, and a stew made from ingredients brought in from neighboring systems. Simple, but to a traveler's stomach, it would be a welcome relief. Take a seat, Jack gestured to the dining area in the corner of the kitchen. The sisters moved as one, sitting at the long table without a word. Jack hesitated for a moment, then grabbed the pot of broth, pouring it into small bowls. He added a few slices of bread on the side, and carefully placed it before each of them. He watched them cautiously as they picked up their utensils. The sisters regarded the meal with the cold detachment of those used to finer, more sophisticated dishes. Jack expected them to turn up their noses, but instead, they seemed intrigued. Nixery took the first sip of broth, her expression unreadable, and then passed the bowl to Velena. The younger sister tasted it next, her gaze flickering to her older sibling, before she nodded approvingly. Remarkable, Velena said, setting down her spoon. There is a complexity in the flavors. Nixery's gaze didn't waver from the bowl, but her lips quirked slightly. This is unexpected, she murmured. Her eyes turned to Jack, then back to the food. Your species is resourceful. Jack's heart skipped a beat. The Zhael were not known for their tolerance or appreciation of other races. The fact that they seemed impressed was something he hadn't anticipated. What do you think? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Velena's smile widened. It's not what we expected from a species like yours. Not what you expected. Jack raised an eyebrow. I'm just a cook. What did you expect? Nixery's cold gaze finally met his. Humans are underestimated. We've seen your kind at the edge of the galaxy, surviving but not thriving. It's surprising to witness such potential. Jack didn't know how to respond. He wasn't sure whether they were complimenting him or threatening him. Before he could say anything, the hum of the station's communication system rang out, startling both Jack and the sisters. The voice on the intercom was familiar, but it sent a chill down his spine. Emissaries Nixery and Velena, we've received a communication from Zhael Command. The fleet is en route. Nixery's eyes flashed with an intensity that Jack hadn't seen before. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Velena followed suit, the faint smile gone from her face. "Your fleet?" Jack asked, his voice tight. Velena met his gaze, her voice now laced with an edge. "Our empire does not wait. The fleet will arrive shortly." A sinking feeling hit Jack's stomach. He glanced at the sisters, wondering what was going on. What had his food triggered? The sisters exchanged a look, and then Nixery's voice turned colder than before. "We didn't intend to bring war here, Chef Armstrong. But you've caught our attention. A simple meal has a strange power to it." The room felt smaller as Jack's mind raced. Was this the beginning of something much larger than he ever imagined? Or had he unknowingly ignited a chain of events that could lead to destruction? Before he could process the situation further, the Zhael sisters stood up, leaving their plates behind without a second glance. The hum of the ship's intercom sounded again, but this time, it was accompanied by a distant, unmistakable sound, a thrum, a vibration that seemed to shake the very core of the station. And then, Jack realized. In that quiet moment, as the sound intensified, something enormous was approaching. Something dangerous. Something he might have just unleashed. The station hummed with a new, ominous energy. Jack stood at the large observation window, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. What had been a calm, peaceful void just moments ago was now filled with the unsettling vibration of something coming closer, something massive. His palms were sweating as he wiped them against his apron, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. Nixery and Velena had left the kitchen in a rush, their silence as chilling as the unease that now gripped the entire station. They hadn't even bothered to finish their meal. The sound of boots echoing on metal floors confirmed that the sisters were already on their way to the command center. "Chef Armstrong," a voice called out from behind him. Jack turned to see Captain Elise Anders, her face as grim as ever, walking toward him with hurried steps. "We need to talk. Now." Jack nodded, following her down the narrow hallway that led to the station's command room. The lights flickered faintly as they moved, a result of the sudden change in power draw. The crew was on edge, and the station's automated systems seemed to mirror their anxiety. Jack's mind raced with questions, none of which had easy answers. As they reached the command center, Jack could hear raised voices coming from within. He recognized Nixery's sharp tones cutting through the murmurs of the station's crew. "You must understand, Captain, our arrival was never meant to escalate into this. We did not intend for the fleet to engage." Nixery's voice was ice-cold, and her words were delivered with a kind of authority that was unsettling to hear in this small, human outpost. Captain Anders stepped into the room, her expression unreadable. She shot a glance at Jack, then addressed Nixery. "Then why are your warships heading straight for us? Explain that." Nixery's eyes, black and endless, turned slowly toward Jack. "It is not his fault, Captain. It was never our intention to send a fleet." Her voice was low now, like she was considering something very carefully. "But he has done something that we did not foresee." Jack felt his throat tighten. "What did I do?" he asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and dread. "It was just food. Nothing more." Velena, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "Your food has triggered a signal. A recognition signal, embedded deep within the Zhael network. When we tasted it, your meal, it unlocked something within us. Something we didn't realize was still active." Captain Anders stepped forward, her voice sharp. "You're telling me that his cooking is now a diplomatic incident?" Velena's lips curled slightly. "Not just that. It's much more than that." She paused, as if contemplating the words. "Your species has a knack for surviving the most unlikely situations, Jack Armstrong. You may not understand yet, but the moment we tasted your food, it caused something within the Zhael Empire to stir. It resonated." Jack blinked, his mind trying to catch up. "Resonated?" Nixery spoke again, her tone as calculating as ever. "Our people have been exploring, expanding, and conquering for millennia. There are ancient protocols within our empire, embedded in our genetic code. They are triggered by certain stimuli, and, unbeknownst to us, your meal was one of those triggers. A chill ran down Jack's spine. What are you saying? Valena's gaze softened for a moment, but her next words cut through the room with chilling finality. The Zhael fleet is on its way here. The trigger has been activated. You've drawn attention, Jack Armstrong, whether you realize it or not. Jack staggered back slightly. But I didn't mean for this to happen. I know, Nixery interrupted, her voice still cool but tinged with an unusual hint of respect. You didn't intend for it. But it is happening, and now we must deal with the consequences. Captain Anders stepped forward, her face determined. What are you proposing, then? Do we just sit here and wait for your fleet to decide our fate? Jack felt the weight of the moment press down on him. The sisters' presence, the tension in the room, and the knowledge that a massive armada was on its way made his mind whirl. His hands trembled, but he forced himself to stay calm. What do I need to do to stop this? Valena exchanged a glance with Nixery. There is a way. But it is not something we have ever tried before. Jack narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? The younger sister took a step closer. We need to prove to the Zhael Empire that humanity is not just a species to be conquered. You've shown us something unexpected in your food. Now, you must show us more. You must demonstrate that humanity can stand its ground in a galaxy filled with empires that believe themselves superior. Jack's stomach churned. You want me to fight? With food? Nixery finally spoke again, her voice commanding. Not fight. Outwit. Show the Zhael that your species can create, adapt, and innovate under pressure. You must do what no other species has ever dared. Prove your worth by challenging our traditions, by offering something that the Zhael cannot ignore. That's ridiculous. Jack protested. I'm a cook, not a diplomat or a soldier. Valena smiled faintly. That is exactly why you were chosen. We didn't expect your food to have such a profound impact on our people. But it has. Now you must use that impact to show us that we cannot underestimate your species. Captain Anders had been quiet throughout this exchange, but now she spoke up. What are you asking him to do, exactly? Are we supposed to host some kind of competition? A cook-off to end a galactic war? Nixery nodded slowly. Not a competition, Captain. A challenge. We need a test of both human will and ingenuity. You have already proven that humans can surprise us. But you must show us how far that surprise can go. You, Chef Armstrong, have the ability to change the course of this situation. Jack swallowed hard, feeling a sense of overwhelming pressure bear down on him. The weight of his cooking, something so simple, something so human, had now led to a galactic confrontation. And now, he was expected to find a way to turn it around. For the first time since the Zhael sisters had entered the kitchen, Jack understood the gravity of the situation. It wasn't just about food. It was about survival, about proving that humanity could stand up to the might of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for centuries. Jack took a deep breath, forcing his voice to steady. All right. I'll do it. I'll show you what humanity is capable of. Valena's eyes gleamed with approval. Good. We begin tomorrow. The fleet's arrival will mark the start of the challenge. And so, the countdown began. The station's fate, the fate of humanity, hung in the balance. Jack Armstrong, the humble cook, was about to face a challenge that could change everything. The Zhael fleet hovered just beyond the station's orbit, an imposing presence in the dark expanse of space. Jack could feel it, the hum of anticipation, the weight of what he had agreed to. The crew of the Tralles Expanse Research Hub worked frantically, preparing for a confrontation they never imagined they'd face. As Jack stood in the command center, his eyes fixed on the massive holographic map of the fleet's formation, he tried to steady his breath. His hands, still slick with the sweat of a sleepless night, rested on the console before him. Captain Anders, standing beside him, wore the same expression of grim determination. She hadn't left his side since the sisters had issued their challenge. 10 minutes, she said, her voice tight. They'll begin the countdown in 10 minutes. Are you ready? Jack stared at the swirling lights on the hologram, the ships that looked like mere specks on the map but whose impact would be devastating. The station, so small in comparison, felt fragile. A single misstep could end everything. I don't know, Jack muttered. I've never had to do anything like this before. You don't have to fight them, Jack, Anders said. This isn't a war. It's a test of your people's ability to innovate. Just do what you do best. Jack took a long breath. That's what scares me. What if what I do best isn't enough? Anders gave him a sharp look. Then we die fighting. We die proving that humanity isn't going to just roll over. A sudden clank echoed from the door, followed by the unmistakable sound of high heels clicking across the floor. Jack turned to see Nixery and Velena stepping into the room, their presence commanding, as usual. Time's up, Nixery stated coldly, her eyes scanning the room. The challenge begins now. Will you be ready, human? Jack squared his shoulders, trying to shake the feeling of dread that had been creeping up on him ever since the sisters had introduced the challenge. What are the parameters of this challenge? His voice held more steadiness than he felt. Velena, whose earlier compassion had been replaced by an almost icy resolve, spoke next. This is not a simple competition. We're not interested in the trivial. We want to see if humanity can think and act beyond the boundaries of what we know. Your species, with all your imperfections, has proven resourceful. This challenge will test whether that resourcefulness can hold its own against the Zhael's understanding of power. Jack's stomach twisted. How? Nixery stepped forward, her voice low, almost conspiratorial. You will be provided with resources, but the Zhael Empire has its standards. You will use only what we provide. It's not about the meal you make, it's about how you adapt, how you solve the problems you're given. Your ingenuity. Your ability to innovate under pressure. Velena added, failure to impress us will have consequences. Captain Anders turned to Jack, her eyes sharp but supportive. I think we can handle that. A strange silence hung in the air for a moment. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jack's mind was racing, but he forced himself to focus. This wasn't about fighting. It wasn't about making a meal that would save the galaxy, it was about showing the Zhael sisters, and more importantly, humanity itself, that humans could do what others thought impossible. All right, Jack said finally, his voice steady. I'm ready. Nixery motioned for one of the Zhael technicians to step forward. He was holding a large, metallic box, and as he opened it, Jack's eyes fell on a strange array of ingredients, some he recognized, some he didn't. Fresh vegetables, alien fruits, and cuts of meat that didn't look anything like anything from Earth. The list of supplies was short, sparse, and non-negotiable. This is all we can give you, Nixery said, her voice laced with finality. Use it wisely. Jack inspected the ingredients, noting the unusual properties of the items. There was a strange, gel-like substance that seemed to shimmer in the light, something that resembled meat but was more translucent than anything he had ever seen. The vegetables, oddly geometric, seemed almost too perfect, as if they had been artificially created to fit some alien ideal of precision. He took a deep breath, rolling up his sleeves. Let's do this. The room had been set up for the challenge, a long metal counter filled with preparation tools. The crew of the station, along with Nixery and Velena, were positioned at their respective stations, each watching intently. There was no cheering. No clapping. Only the hum of the station systems and the tension in the air as Jack started working. With a steady hand, Jack set to work, peeling, cutting, and manipulating the alien ingredients. He didn't know how to work with the shimmering gel or the translucent meat, but he knew that if there was one thing humans had, it was the ability to adapt. I didn't get into cooking to become a galactic hero, he muttered to himself, trying to focus on the task at hand. I just wanted to make people feel something real. As the minutes ticked by, Jack's focus sharpened. The challenge wasn't just about making something delicious, it was about proving that human ingenuity could rival the best the galaxy had to offer. Valena observed him closely, her arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "You're moving quickly," she remarked. "What is it that you hope to accomplish?" Jack didn't look up from his work. "You asked for innovation. So I'm going to innovate." He worked with an intensity that even surprised him. As he mixed flavors, combined textures, and experimented with the ingredients in front of him, Jack realized something: this was no longer about survival. This was about creating a story of human resilience. Finally, as the countdown on the digital display above the station reached its last minute, Jack presented his dish. It wasn't the most elegant, but it was as raw, honest, and full of a creative spark that was uniquely human. He placed the plate in front of Nixery and Valena, who stared down at it, their expressions unreadable. The silence stretched on, until finally, Nixery reached for the fork. She tasted the dish first. Then Valena. Their eyes met across the table, and for a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Nixery set the fork down, her voice cold but with a hint of something else. This is unexpected." Valena turned to Jack, a slight smile breaking through her composed facade. "It seems you have passed the first test, human." Jack's heart pounded in his chest, but he held his ground. "It's just food," he said simply. "It's what humans do best." The room was still, but the tension had shifted. It was no longer the quiet dread of impending doom. Now, it was the calm before the storm of potential, human potential. And for the first time since the Zhael fleet had appeared, Jack felt a glimmer of hope.